Hello, my name is Gene Theodori, and my co-author on this paper presentation is Chris Podesky. Our working title is Residents' Views of Shale Energy Development, Expected versus Actual Perceptions. So in today's presentation, I will first set the stage with some background information, state the purpose of our presentation, talk about the data collection process, address the measurement of variables, explain the analyses and results, highlight two primary conclusions, and address one important limitation. So, a large social scientific research literature on shale energy development has accrued since the early 2000s. One major theme of investigation within this extensive body of work has centered on examining stakeholders' perceptions of various economic, environmental, and social impacts associated with shale development. The majority of researchers who have examined such perceptions did so shortly after horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing began in and around local communities in the respective shale plays from which the cross-sectional data were collected. A few researchers investigated stakeholders' perceptions in shale plays that had yet to experience large-scale shale energy development. Overall, the findings from these studies were relatively consistent. Stakeholders tended to perceive environmental and social impacts that may be associated with shale development more negatively than perceived economic and service-related impacts. As revealed in the literature, perceptions of environmental and social impacts were largely framed in terms of risks, threats, costs, or consequences. Views of certain economic and service-related effects were often framed as opportunities and benefits. Noticeably absent from the research conducted thus far are longitudinal studies and/or cross-sectional analyses assessing local stakeholders' perceptions of shale energy development prior to and after the commencement of upstream shale gas and/or oil development activities. Notwithstanding Willits et al.'s paper on changes in residents' views of natural gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale during a time period of rapid development, 2009 to 2012, we are unaware of any published literature in which researchers incorporated either a longitudinal design or a cross-sectional design to gauge pre-boom and post-boom perceptions. Rooting to previous boomtown studies that have analyzed longitudinal data comparing pre-boom and post-boom conditions in communities affected by large-scale energy resource development activities, we believe that our presentation represents an initial step in comparing pre-boom and post-boom perceptions of shale development. So, using cross-sectional data collected from random samples of individuals in two communities located in the Marcellus Shale region of Pennsylvania, we examine residents' perceptions of selected issues when they first learned that large-scale natural gas development was slated to occur in the Marcellus Shale. We're calling those the recollected pre-boom perceptions. We examine residents' perceptions of these same issues after the development of the Marcellus Shale, what we're calling their post-boom perceptions. And we examine the difference between residents' recollected perceptions of the issues pre-Marcellus Shale development and their post-Marcellus Shale development perceptions. The data used for this paper were collected in a mail survey from random samples of residents in and around two boroughs located within Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. Marcellus Shale development began in Lycoming County in 2007. From 2007 through April 30th, 2018, 966 unconventional gas wells were drilled in Lycoming County. Approximately 90% of those gas wells were drilled between 2010 and 2014. Questionnaires were distributed by mail in May and June of 2018. A three-contact procedure was used. First, potential respondents were mailed an initial copy of the survey, complete with an accompanying cover letter and a $2 bill incentive. A reminder letter was mailed approximately 1 week afterward. Roughly 2 weeks later, non-respondents were sent a final follow-up mailing that included a copy of the survey questionnaire. Potential respondents were given the option of completing the questionnaire online via Qualtrics. Of the 2,000 questionnaires initially mailed, 339 were returned as undeliverable. Addresses for the undeliverable questionnaires were not replaced, hence the final sample size was reduced to 1,661. Of these, a total of 551 questionnaires were completed and returned, a response rate of 33.2%. A two-part survey item was used to measure residents' perceptions of 28 issues potentially associated with shale energy development prior to and after the development of the Marcellus Shale in and around their local communities. First, survey respondents were asked to indicate whether they had expected each issue would get better, stay the same, or get worse prior to the development of the Marcellus Shale. Respondents then were asked to indicate whether they believed each issue actually got better, stayed the same, or got worse after the Marcellus Shale development. Responses were coded as -1, get worse, got worse, 0, stayed the same, and 1, get better, got better. We propose that the first item measures residents' recollected pre-boom perceptions, whereas the second item assesses residents' post-boom perceptions. Now we turn our attention to the analyses and the results. For presentation purposes, the 28 issues were ranked by recollected pre-boom mean perception score and listed in ascending order. As shown on this slide, 21 of the 28 issues had negative pre-boom mean perception scores, indicating residents recollected that they had expected these issues to worsen with the advent of Marcellus Shale development. The overwhelming majority of these 21 issues can be classified as social and/or environmental issues. Transportation-related problems were viewed as those issues expected to worsen the most. The issue of traffic congestion had the greatest negative mean value. The issue of safety on the roads and streets had the second highest negative mean score, followed closely by the issue of conditions of roads and streets. At the same time, residents had expected the remaining 7 issues, all of which were economic and/or service-related concerns, to improve. Included here in ascending order were economic inequality between households, places to shop locally, number and variety of local restaurants, local poverty, the health of the local economy, wages for local jobs, and job availability. For the most part, issues that residents had perceived would worsen prior to the commencement of upstream natural gas activities were in fact viewed as worsening after the development of Marcellus Shale. All 21 issues with negative recollected pre-boom mean perception scores had negative post-boom mean perception scores. The magnitudes of the differences between the two negative values for these 21 issues varied greatly. For 16 of these 21 issues, the values of the negative post-boom mean perception scores were less than those of the pre-boom mean perception scores, indicating that although the residents' post-boom perceptions of the issues were negative, they were not as bad on average as originally anticipated. For 5 of the 20 issues with both negative pre- and post-boom mean scores, the values of the negative post-boom mean scores were greater than the negative recollected pre-boom mean scores, indicating that even though residents had anticipated those issues would worsen somewhat with Marcellus Shale development, residents on average perceived the issues as worsening more than they had originally expected after development activities commenced. Topping this list was the issue concerning prices for everyday items, rent, etc. Residents largely viewed this economic impact as the one issue that worsened the most post-Marcellus Shale development. Of the 7 issues that residents had perceived would improve with Marcellus Shale energy development, 6 of them had positive post-boom mean perception scores. The magnitudes of the positive post-boom mean values were less than those of the recollected pre-boom mean values, indicating that although the residents' post-boom perceptions of these issues were positive, they were not as favorable as the recollected pre-boom perceptions. With respect to the issue of economic inequality between households, the recollected pre-boom mean perception score was 0.014 and the post-boom mean perception score was negative 0.092, indicating that although residents had anticipated that the economic inequality between households would get better with Marcellus Shale development, residents on average actually perceived the issue as worsening after the development. Paired sample t-tests were conducted to determine whether the differences that existed between residents' pre-boom and post-boom mean perception scores were statistically significant. As shown on this slide, residents' pre-boom and post-boom mean perception scores differed statistically on 23 of 28 issues. So, in summary, these data gathered from residents in and around two boroughs in Lycoming County during the lull in Marcellus Shale development activities provided two substantive insights. First, the overall pattern of results mirrored those from previous investigations. Here, as in earlier studies, residents viewed favorably most of the economic and/or service-related impacts and viewed unfavorably the vast majority of environmental and social issues perceived to accompany shale development. Such was the case with respect to both recollected pre-boom and post-boom perceptions. Second, despite outliers for certain issues, the post-boom mean perception scores were less than the recollected pre-boom mean perception scores, regardless if the mean perception scores were positive or negative. Relatively speaking, with regard to their post-boom perceptions of the environmental and social issues, residents largely perceived that things did not turn out as poorly as they had expected before the boom. Regarding their post-boom views of the economic and/or service-related impacts, residents generally perceived that things did not turn out as well as they had expected. In short, this presentation has extended the research record on local stakeholders' perceptions of shale energy development. We recognize the inherent limitations of using cross-sectional data to assess recollected pre-boom perceptions. Therefore, caution should be taken when generalizing the findings of this study. In light of this, we encourage future researchers interested in perceptual change analyses to design and conduct longitudinal studies. On this slide, you will find a list of references. Thank you very much.